In 1914, there was this young guy from England. He spent 67 days on a boat sailing to a faraway island in the South Atlantic. Why? Well, he got a job there watching the weather for a whole year. On the last day of the trip, while he was chilling and smoking by the edge of the boat, the captain asked him why he was escaping from something. That's what folks always asked him when he chose the sea. But this English guy didn't say a word. When they finally reached the island, everybody helped the Englishman carry his stuff to the cabin where he'd be staying. But something was off. No birds chirping, and no weather official there to welcome them. The cabin looked deserted, like nobody had been there for ages. The captain got worried, thinking it wasn't safe for the Englishman to stay. But he was stubborn. He insisted on staying, even when the captain thought it wasn't a good idea. Against the rules, the captain joined him in checking out the place to make sure everything was okay. As they headed towards the distant lighthouse, they stumbled upon a fountain with a strange message etched on its rocks. "Gruner owns this fountain." The captain, feeling cautious, sent his crew back to the boat and continued alongside the Englishman. Upon reaching the lighthouse, they found it crudely protected. Despite their calls and knocks yielding no response, they barged in and ascended the stairs. Inside, they discovered an elderly man, Gruner, fast asleep. He mumbled about returning to the water before stirring. When asked about Aldor Vigeland, the previous weather observer, Gruner cryptically mentioned Vigeland's demise due to typhus. He claimed Vigeland vanished one day, never to be seen again. Frustrated by Gruner's unhelpfulness, the two departed. The Englishman, determined to stay, resisted the captain's attempts to give him a gun. After exchanging farewells, he headed to his cabin, eager to arrange his belongings and set up his weather equipment. He uncovers an old journal in the desk, choosing to read it near the fire. At first, it's all regular stuff about island plants and animals. Then, he finds a photo of a woman in a wedding dress labeled Mrs. Vigeland, suggesting she was the previous guy's wife. But things take a strange turn. The journal talks about scary sea creatures attacking people, and a spooky message saying Darwin was wrong. The following day, while checking the weather by the beach, the Englishman spots circles of rocks filled with shells, meticulously arranged on the sand. They seemed deliberately crafted, not the haphazard work of nature. Later that night, during dinner in his cabin, eerie noises echo outside, growls and thumps against the wooden walls. Slowly approaching the door, he's startled as a monstrous paw emerges from beneath it, a creature matching the drawings from the journal. More of them begin scaling the house. In a frantic moment, he dashes to the basement, slamming the door shut behind him. Peering through a hole in the wood, he sees the creatures above. Startled as one peers back through the same hole, he acts quickly, stabbing it with a knife he manages to thrust through. Though he's secured in the basement, the creatures persist. To safeguard himself, he ties the door handle to the stairs and spends the night in basement. The next morning, he emerges to a grim scene. Blood stains the cabin floor, and peculiar footprints mark the sandy shore. In a rush, he heads to the lighthouse but is thwarted by an unyielding door. Repeated calls for Gruner prompt the old man to open a window, dousing him with water and adamantly denying entry, insisting he should have stayed on the boat. Undeterred, the Englishman prepares for the impending night. Sealing windows, he constructs a defensive circle around the cabin with wood and books, soaked in lamp oil. Inside, he barricades the door, loading a rifle for defense. The creatures soon descend, assaulting the reinforced windows and door. While he manages to shoot a few, their sheer numbers overwhelm him. In desperation, he ignites a torch and hurls it onto the prepared circle, setting it ablaze. The fire scares away the monsters, but spirals out of control, engulfing the cabin. Forced to escape, he burns his hand in the process, seeking refuge behind beach rocks as rain begins to fall. Returning to the ruined cabin the next morning, he assesses the wreckage before tending to his injured hand with a makeshift bandage. Armed with the rifle, he stealthily tails Gruner to the fountain, intending to confront him. But before he can take action, he's attacked by a female sea creature clad in a sweater. Managing to fend her off, he aims the rifle, but their standoff is interrupted by Gruner's arrival, who also brandishes a weapon. Refusing to back down, he coerces Gruner into lowering his weapon by threatening the creature. When asked about his intentions, the Englishman asserts his desire to stay and shares his resources in exchange for shelter in the lighthouse. After convincing Gruner that the creature poses no threat, he demonstrates her obedience, akin to a trained pet. Before parting ways, Gruner decides to christen the Englishman as Friend. In a scramble, Friend and Gruner gather as many supplies as they can carry from the cabin. Friend confronts Gruner, suggesting the previous weatherman wasn't a victim of typhus, but rather abandoned to the creatures. Gruner evades confirming or denying, urging them to depart as night looms. Days pass, and we find Friend slumbering within the lighthouse, abruptly awakened by the creature tenderly licking his burned hand. a revelation that her saliva holds healing powers. Gruner's entrance interrupts, revealing that friend has slept for nearly 2 days, even wetting himself. They ascend, counting their limited bullets, engaging in conversation about the creature. Gruner admits his inability to communicate with her, merely commanding her actions. She's akin to a loyal dog, tethered to her master despite his cruelty. Friend, fascinated, marvels at her, and delves into theories about isolated sea creatures evolving uniquely for survival. In response to Friend's musings, Gruner abruptly steers him to the balcony, revealing the creature's aversion to light, whether natural or artificial. When questioned about Gruner's refusal to depart with the recent boat, Friend queries the allure of civilization. Gruner contends that he prefers the autonomy and control of his own fate in this remote place. Unperturbed, Friend suggests signaling passing boats, prompting Gruner's amusement as they are far from any commercial routes. The lighthouse's existence, Gruner reveals, was merely a facade to misdirect funds. Days trickle by, and Friend endeavors to forge a new beginning. While exploring the lighthouse, he improvises comfort by setting up a hammock and unearths an old diving suit. He starts marking the passing days on the wall and gradually acclimates to amicable interactions with the creature. As night descended, Gruner armed Friend and led him to the balcony adorned with lit torches and the radiant lighthouse lamp. Fully equipped, Gruner briefed Friend on the impending creature onslaught, stressing the importance of shooting only when they drew near. Gruner assured him that downing just a couple of them would trigger the creatures to turn on each other. Their own creature made loud sounds from the balcony above, leaving Friend pondering whether the monsters refrained from attacking to rescue her. When the creatures eventually arrived, Gruner swiftly engaged them in combat. Overwhelmed by fear, Friend retreated inside, succumbing to unconsciousness. The following morning, an irate Gruner roused him, expressing his unwillingness to tolerate any dead weight, no matter the provisions offered. He dispatched Friend to fetch water, a task promptly carried out. Upon his return, Friend made a disquieting discovery. Gruner had spent the night with the creature. After another trial, Gruner grants Friend a final chance. As the creatures approach, Gruner retreats indoors, swiftly locking Friend out to fend for himself. The following morning, Gruner discovers Friend, bloodied yet triumphant, having survived the night's ordeal. Despite the tension, a routine settles in. Friend undertakes daily chores to earn his place in the lighthouse, while both men fortify against nocturnal creature assaults. In moments of reflection, Friend recalls his original quest for solace in the island's emptiness, but finds himself immersed in a living nightmare. Perplexed by the creature's intermittent attacks, he questions the prolonged periods of peace. 2 entire weeks pass, without a trace of the menacing creatures. During his wood-gathering expeditions, Friend also scavenges whale bones for carving. Puzzled by Gruner's duality, attacking the creatures while forming an unusual bond with one, whom he names Anaris, Friend can't fathom how Gruner tolerates the chilling touch of her cold skin. Despite this, Friend himself grows attached to Anaris, developing an unexpected camaraderie. One fateful night, their engrossment in a game of chess leads to oversight. The creatures launch an attack, and in a frantic scramble, they barricade themselves in the lighthouse. Gruner sustains a leg injury during the melee, tended to by Anaris's healing abilities. The following morning, as Anaris tends to Gruner's wound, Friend raises concerns about their dwindling ammunition, signaling an imminent threat to their survival. On a beach excursion, he discovers a necklace, coinciding with the sighting of a distant boat. Rushing back with a flare gun in hand, Friend intends to signal the boat, but Gruner staunchly refuses, safeguarding his solitary existence on the island. In a tussle to prevent Friend's signaling attempt, Anaris intervenes, growling at Gruner, asserting protection over Friend. Friend, alarmed by Gruner's mistreatment of Anaris, follows her outside after she flees the lighthouse. Setting aside his rifle, he approaches her gently, unveiling a whalebone boat he carved. Anaris recognizes the design, leading Friend to a hidden spot on the beach where an abandoned boat rests in the sand. Excited, Friend rushes back to inform Gruner, who is already aware but deems the boat futile. Gruner asserts that attempting to leave on it would result in certain demise, either through starvation or creature attacks. When probed about the boat's backstory, Gruner reveals it belonged to a Portuguese man who escaped a shipwreck but fell victim to the monsters. The ship carried dynamite, now likely waterlogged and unusable. Friend unveils the discovered diving suit, proposing a plan to retrieve the submerged dynamite, believing it could help eradicate the creatures. However, Gruner dismisses the idea as a futile endeavor with no chance of success. Undeterred by Gruner's jealousy, the next day, Friend persists in repairing the boat. However, his focus shifts when he hears Anaris singing in the fountain. Stripping down, he joins her in the water, unaware that Gruner is watching, consumed by envy. Returning to the lighthouse, Gruner unexpectedly tosses the diving suit at Friend, claiming a change of heart. The underlying motive becomes clear. It's a ploy to rid himself of Friend and monopolize Anaris. Setting sail on the boat, they reach the shipwreck area. Friend dons the diving suit and descends into the depths, discovering boxes of dynamite. Tethering them to a rope, he signals for retrieval. Yet, two juvenile creatures knock him down, draining his air supply. Desperate for help, Friend pulls the cord 3 times, a distress signal deliberately ignored by Gruner. Forced to abandon the diving suit, Friend swims back to the boat. Returning to the lighthouse, they open the dynamite boxes. One is waterlogged, as anticipated, but the others remain intact. Outside, they bury the dynamite in 2 lines near the house, one perilously close to the walls. As winter settles in and snow blankets the island, a week passes devoid of creature attacks. One frosty morning, Friend discovers Gruner, nearly frozen, having spent the night on the balcony with his hand on the dynamite detonator. Rescuing him from the perilous cold, Friend disconnects the wires before ushering Gruner inside. Another 3 weeks pass uneventfully until Gruner, suspecting Anaris of signaling her companions, strikes her. Determined to set a trap, Gruner takes Anaris to the balcony that night, compelling her to sing, while Friend guards the open door surrounded by lamps. An unexpected gust of wind extinguishes some of the lamps, providing the creatures an opening to assail the lighthouse. As Friend ascends, fending off the attackers, Gruner attempts to trigger the dynamite without success. Left to defend himself, Gruner struggles until Friend arrives to reattach the wires to the detonator amidst the chaos. With the detonator reconnected, Gruner pulls the lever, causing the distant line of dynamite to explode and decimate most of the creatures. Ignoring Friend's warnings, Gruner impulsively triggers the closest line, resulting in an explosion that leaves both men unconscious. Come morning, they venture out to survey the aftermath. Gruner ruthlessly dispatches any surviving creatures, but Friend recoils when he discovers a bone necklace on one of them, a sign of intelligence. Gruner callously discards the necklace into the water. That night, the creatures stay at bay, but the melancholic sounds of Anaris echo from the beach. Gruner discloses how he found her as a crying baby trapped in a net, noting her tendency to return despite her initial distress. Friend interprets it as mourning. The next day, strolling along the beach, Friend spots 2 juvenile creatures in the sea. Trying to extend an olive branch, he creates a circle of stones on the sand, placing the bone boat he carved in the center. Returning to the lighthouse, Friend witnesses Gruner reloading their rifles with fake bullets, intending to maintain an illusion of threat. Unperturbed, Friend heads to the balcony, using binoculars to check on his bone boat, finding it exactly where he placed it. The following morning, Friend discovers Gruner in a drunken slumber, a spilled deck of cards on the floor. Inside the card box, he finds the same picture of the woman from his cabin, but now with her husband. Love, love, love is inscribed on the back. A revelation strikes Friend. Gruner is an alias, and the previous weatherman is still alive. Gruner is, in fact, the weatherman driven to madness by loss and isolation. Disturbed by this revelation, Friend resolves to erase the day count he meticulously kept on the wall. As Friend wanders along the beach, he discovers the stone circle empty. The creatures have taken the little bone boat. Spotting a child monster in the distance, he places the torch he's carrying in the stone circle and cautiously backs away, signaling he poses no threat. Approaching him, the young creature is joined by several others, including a more confident-looking Anaris. The child creature seems about to return the bone boat to Friend, when Gruner interrupts with a rifle shot, shattering the peaceful moment. Friend attempts to reason with Gruner, insisting that the creatures are actually friendly. Ignoring him, Gruner commands Anaris to return home, but she refuses to comply. In a fit of distress, Gruner's desperate cries echo. Nobody leaves Gruner. Gruner leaves, as he rushes back to the lighthouse. Friend, attempting to reconcile with the creatures, witnesses the child creature fall from a shot fired by Gruner from the lighthouse balcony. In panic, all the creatures, including Anaris, flee into the water, sharing a poignant look with Friend before departing. Consumed by fury, Friend confronts Gruner, but Gruner gains the upper hand. Just as Gruner prepares to strike him with an axe, Friend reveals Gruner's true identity, Aldor Vigeland, and proclaims, "Aldor Vigeland is not a murderer." Struck by these words, Gruner repeats, "Love, love, love," before opening the door and willingly exposing himself to the creatures. Watching in horror as the creatures attack Gruner, Friend shuts the door, resigned to the loss and the solitude that now envelops him in the empty lighthouse. As time moves on, 3 officers arrive at the lighthouse to wake up Friend, who's asleep in Gruner's old bed. They mistake Friend for Gruner, and think he's the weatherman they've come to replace. Friend doesn't correct them, and even says the weatherman passed away from an illness called typhus. The main officer scolds Friend for the messy room and tells him they're in the middle of a war. Meanwhile, Friend steps out onto the balcony and spots a bunch of ships far away. The movie ends with Daenerys running along the beach, then jumping back into the water. Thanks for tuning in, everyone.